So thanks for the nice introduction, Cordula, and thank you for inviting me to speak a little bit about CTIS. And you have heard a little bit in general about CTIS, and I now will go a little bit more into the details of the system that will be available on Monday. I think they mentioned 9 o'clock, you will be able to submit clinical trials through CTIS. So, yeah, as you have heard from Tanya already, we have come a long way with the implementation of the regulation and the implementation of CTIS, the Clinical Trial Information System. So the CTR sets the legal framework for this portal, and CTIS will now define how these specifications are operationalized in CTIS and how we will work with the new CTR. So what exactly is CTIS? You also have heard we have 3 parts in CTIS. We have a sponsor workspace and an authority workspace, which are secured access. So you have to have an IMA account to be able to work in this system. And you will also have a public website where all the general public will be able to see all the data that goes into this database. So what are the benefits? You already heard about that also. We now have hopefully a single entry point for clinical trial applications, only electronic submission anymore, no paperwork, hopefully. And it is supposed to provide a workspace with collaboration tools and the opportunity for a very coordinated assessment between the member states involved in the clinical trial. We still have a single decision in a member state concerned, so you will not get one permission for your application. All the member states decide for themselves, but it will only be one single decision from the authority and the ethics committee. It also enables supervision at a European level, including the inspections. And as said before, it provides publicly available information. And there will be a maximum of transparency to European trials. And we will come to this point later, what this means for sponsors. So I will focus on the main challenges from an academic point of view, as we are an academic institution. And many of you might also do trials and conduct trials, academic trials in the European Union. So what needs to be considered from this point of view? And there are a lot of things that need to be considered. It's about timelines, which have tightened a lot for us. It's about all the user management that comes with CTIS, with the information system. And we are not only doing submissions through this portal, but it's the whole life cycle of a clinical trial, which brings a lot of challenges. Also, a big challenge for academia will be the CTIS environment and the corresponding databases from EMA. I will point this out later. And you have already heard there is a transition period that also comes with challenges that we have to think about, and the aspect of transparency in this. So let's start with the transition period. Just very quickly, you have heard we have the first year the opportunity to decide, do we want to follow directive or do we want to follow a new regulation? Member states must be ready from day 1, which will be on Monday. And we can choose. In the second and third year, we are not able to choose anymore. We have to submit under the new regulation, but we will be able to finish trials until January 25. So if you will not be finished until this date. You have to switch from the old directive to the new regulation. And this is where we are. We are very close to the start, and this are the steps we have to do for the next years. It is good to know UDRA CT will be open for results reporting in the next years. So trials that end later or end until January 25 can be still reported to, or have to be reported to UDRA CT. So what are the points to consider from an academic point of view? What we are now doing is we have to define which trials will finish until 2025. As you all know, it's not always easy to give a prognosis if a trial will be finished until that date. If we are not sure, we have to think about the strategy of transition. So what needs to be done to transition a trial from the directive to the regulation? And this will come with a lot of time for amendments, and as we have to do consolidated protocols, we have to adapt documents, we have to discuss a strategy with the sponsors or investigators and see how it is going. And there is the cost impact of this transition that is not really transparent right now. So there will be additional work, and maybe there will be additional fees. And for us, it's not easy to foresee how this additional workload should be handled. And also for the time management, we have public funding periods that are often 3 years or more, but we have to stay in these funding periods, and we have to do this process in these funding periods. So there's a lot to think about the transition, and we will have to see in the next few months how this will work. Another thing that will be very new, at least for academia here, is the use of the system, the approaches and the roles in CTIS, which is quite complex, I would say. If you want to do a trial in CTIS, if you plan to submit trials, you can decide between two user management approaches. On the one hand, we have the organization-centric approach, which has been designed for sponsors with larger numbers of trials. This approach requires a validated high-level administrator by EMA for your organization. All users that will do work in CTIS will become affiliated to your organization, and they always need to have assigned their role by an administrator. So what is positive about this approach is that it creates the opportunity for management of access and roles across the trials in one organization. So it gives the sponsor a very, very good oversight what is going on under his sponsorship. It improves security. Not everybody is able to conduct a trial under your sponsorship, and it prevents the duplication of sponsor organization details. On the negative side, it requires a registration process with EMA and a validation process, and it adds some administrative burden on sponsor level. Besides this is the approach most German universities will follow because they want to have sponsor oversight. But I also heard from colleagues from other countries like Denmark, where I think most university or hospitals will follow the trial-centric approach, which is much easier because you can only go to CTIS with your EMA account and use CTIS without having a sponsor administrator validated. So the sponsor has no oversight what trials will be conducted under his sponsorship. But it is easy to start. It doesn't need a validation process. And so the management of the roles will be done at the trial level. So an easy access and also planned for academia. Here you can see overall we have 49 roles in CTIS, 18 available in the sponsor workspace for sponsors. This is a lot, and it's very specialized roles. You will see in the next slide. We have two types. We have administrator roles and we have business roles. Administrator roles are, as I said before, more responsible for the management and oversight in an organization or in a trial. And those administrators will be able to give, assign, and revoke business roles. The business roles, they reflect the concrete responsibility of the users during the trial life cycle. They need to be assigned by an administrator, and they are linked to specific permissions in the portal. So if you use specific roles, you will be able to see or not to see, or to do or not to do specific things. So this is just a quick overview what roles can be used. You can see that permissions grow from or increase from left to right. So viewers can only view the things, preparers can prepare documents and prepare structured data, and the submitters can finally then submit the data to EMA. So thinking about working with CTIS, there are also a few points to be considered. What is most important, and you see this over here, CTIS will not send emails on a daily basis, or not at all send emails, and you will have to check the system on a daily basis to really be sure that you will be able to catch up all the things, all the questions or things that come up in the portal. So no emails will be sent out. So roles, if you need roles in your organization, or if you assign roles, you have to think, what roles do we really need? Will we use different roles? I guess most academic sponsors will only use the CT admin role, which is a administrator role, which will be able to see everything and to do everything. So it might be the easiest way to work with this role. Yes, you need access to CTIS during the whole trial life cycle, not only for submission, but also for requests for information, for all the notifications in the life cycle, for late reporting, and also for safety reasons and reporting of annual safety reports. You have to check how to work with external partners like industry partners. We have a role that is called QIMPD, which only concerns the quality of the IMP, but yeah, it is not easy to use this role because it's not stringent with the disclosure of this role. So we have to see how this will work with industry partners. So this is a very nice slide, I think, from a colleague from the Austrian authorities, Dr. Strasser, who gave a very nice overview of all the processes in CTIS. It is on the sponsor side, which you see here in red. It's a submission of the dossier, but it also is substantial modifications, the notifications in a trial life cycle to the submission of a clinical trial report at the end. You can also see what is possible for the Commission, who does the union control reports, the member states who work in CTIS, and also the marketing authority applicants who do submission of clinical study reports, and down here, the public who will be able to search and view public information. So to go there with the application dossier, we will now have two parts. We will have a part one, which is the consolidated part between the member states. Here we have the things we usually have in the EU trial application form before. It's like the trial classification, all protocol information. It's about the investigational medicinal product, about quality, labeling. So all these things will be done in part one. You will be able to submit part one alone and do part two, which is on the national level and includes trial site recruitment arrangements, the subject information, and all the suitability forms, insurance and financial agreements. You could do that later at a later part stage, and you have 2 years time when you have submitted a consolidated part one. And if this is accepted, you have two years time to submit part two for the member states that will participate. So during an application, you will receive requests for information. Because, as I said before, there will be no email communication, and all communication will go throughout the portal. So RFIs, so-called RFIs, are always done when the member states want to ask or clarify points, and they can be raised at any time during validation and assessment phase. So this is really for, at least for academic sponsors, these timelines are very tight, and we have 10 days, a maximum of 10 days. During the validation phase, we have a maximum of 12 days during the assessment of part one or two. And to be honest, this is something that will really challenge academia, and we already had the possibility to try this in the pilot phases that have been done on national levels. And yeah, we had a hard time to be able to do this. And what also needs to be considered is that these are maximum timelines, and they might be shortened. And there might be shorter time for the sponsor to respond if the member state thinks they could do it a little bit quicker. So we will see how this will work. If you fail to respond, your application will be lapsed and you have to start again. So this is again an overview of the possible requests for information. You can see here the ones that are done during the application form. Those are the ones I talked about in the slide before. And there also might be requests for information during the clinical trial life cycle, which might be in case of an ad hoc assessment or a corrective measure, or in case of the annual safety reporting. Also, as I said before, substantial, non-substantial modifications and also the additional member state will be done through the portal. So we have now a very good clarification. What is substantial modification? What is non-substantial modification? Excuse me. And this will hopefully give us clarity what to submit as a non-substantial modification. in the portal. Also, if you have a trial and you want to add another member state, you can do this through additional member state concerned. The notifications done in CTIS will be the ones about the trial progress, the start of the trial, if you have a halt, if you restart a trial or have early termination or the end of trial. This needs to be done in 15 days. Also, all the recruitment dates like first visit, first subject, and end of recruitment and restart of recruitment also need to be done within 15 days. Also, which is new, is the incidence reporting through CTIS. We now have a serious breach process, which is new, a very new process, and there's a lot of uncertainty how this exactly will work. We are all trying to figure this out at the moment and trying to find a process how these serious breaches will be reported. We have 7 days for serious breaches as well as for urgent safety measures, and unexpected events affecting the clinical trials will also be 15 days. If you have inspection reports from third countries like Switzerland, which need to be uploaded in CTIS, there's no timeline given for this, but they should also be uploaded in CTIS. Also, the summary of results reporting will now take place in CTIS. The process looks pretty good to us right now, as we only have to upload a PDF, but Emma already mentioned that there will be some changes coming up in the next years, and more structured data will have to be submitted in there. What is new is the reporting of results for layperson summary. So we will see how this will work, and we also have to try to learn how to write layperson summaries in academia. Yeah, you have heard from my side before that timelines are very tight. We will have to answer in very, very short timelines. I mentioned it before, 10 days in the validation phase and 12 days in assessment phase. It's the same if you have an additional member state, and it's also the same timelines if you have substantial modifications. So this will be a challenge for all of us, and we'll see how to deal with this. Another point that needs to be considered is the CTIS environment. You can see here, CTIS is the EU portal, and it is corresponding with a lot of other EMA databases. You can see here the user registration, IAM, which is the identity access management of the EMA. Here you can it's a central EMA login system, and it enables you access to CTIS. We also have the master data management, the organization management system, OMS, which is also very important. And another important database is the XEVMPD, the User Vigilance Medicinal Product Dictionary, where data from authorized or development medicinal products is stored. Yeah, those are the databases corresponding. And for us, it is very important now that we have the XEVMPD, which is new for academia, and we have never been in touch with this database. For now, it is a prerequisite, the registration of your trial products, of your IMPs in this database. So all your IMPs, test comparator, placebo, not really, you can also enter it manually in CTIS, but also auxiliary medicinal product, they all have to be registered in xEVMPD. And what is most or more challenging is that unauthorized products need to be registered by the sponsor if they don't have a marketing authorization in the EEA. So this will be challenging, as we sometimes do trials with unregistered products, and yes, we have to build up some expertise and see how we will be able to submit product data, which is not our primary field, in xEVMPD. So this is a very big challenge, and we are at the moment not sure how to cope with this. Another database very important for working with CTIS is the OMS in the organization management system. Sponsors as well as legal representatives, also third parties like CROs, should be registered through OMS, and also the trial sites should be registered in OMS. So if we have trial sites in Switzerland, we will have to register them also in this system. I mentioned this in the beginning, the transparency and disclosure requirements will bring also very big challenges for us. Article 81 outlines the requirements for transparency in CTIS, and it describes what will be publicly available and what remains confidential. And there's not a lot that remains confidential. It's personal data. It's commercially confidential information, and it's protecting also the confidential communication between the member states and the supervision of the member states. So here you can see what will be published. Main characteristics, all details regarding investigational medicinal products, also your study details like inclusion, exclusion criteria, objectives and endpoints. The conclusion of the assessment and the final decision will be published, and also start and end dates of recruitment and all the notifications you put in CTIS. What will never be published are all the quality related information that include IMPD quality, quality related requests of information, the so-called RFIs, during the assessment, and quality assessment reports. Also personal information and financial agreements like the site contract will not be made publicly available. The data from your application will be made public after a decision by a member state. So in this case, if you get your decision and your trial gets approved, a few days later, all the data will be shared on the public website, and you will be able to see it there. Default is always to make everything public at the first opportunity. That means at the time of decision. But sponsors do have options to defer the timing of the publication of their data. And you can propose some deferrals to the member state, and the member state will decide if they can follow this and will take your justification for deferring the publication. The deferral rules and the maximum timelines of data will depend on the trial category. And as you can see here, there are 3 categories. What can be done? And you see in category 1, which are first in human trials or biosimilarity trials, there is a lot that can be deferred, or there's some things that can be deferred, and it's the longest time, it's up to 7 years. When you move on to category 2, you will have only 5 years after the end of trial. And if you see in category 3, you will only be able to defer protocol or IMPD safety and efficacy sections and IB, and also responses to RFI. So it gets lesser the higher you go in the trial category. Yeah, this will be something to consider, and you can only ask for deferral at the beginning of when you do your initial application. There's no chance to change this. It is at the moment. So you have to think about this really in a good way and think what needs to be really deferred and what can be published. As said before, the trial phase serves as sort of a justification for the category. If a trial covers 2 categories, like trial phase 1 and 2, the higher category will be selected. So there might not be that many opportunities to defer. And deferrals will apply to the entire trial life cycle. So in conclusion to this presentation, yeah, what academia also always means, a sponsor with a limited budget, limited time, and limited human resources. So resourcing and coping with the additional workload from CTIS and the CTR will be very challenging for us. We will need more knowledge and specialization. The transparency and disclosure rules require a lot of knowledge, especially if working with industry. We will have to be careful not to publish data by mistake. We have to get used to a lot of new environments. We have to go from a national to a European level with all the databases that we have not worked with before, like OMS and XEVMPD. We will need more time for preparation of trials, and we will need to prepare much better and much more careful, and we will have to react in time immediately. So yeah, and we need to integrate CTIS in our daily business processes, and therefore structure a lot of processes very new. That's it from my side. Thanks a lot for your attention.